Part 16. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 151. Chapter 151 Conscience Grows. Lu Ziyi's voice was full of joy, which immediately infected Tang Wan. It was just this intimate look that made Sci-fi a little bit disgusted. After all, he has never hugged Tang Tang like this. Lu Ziyi always looked like a happy puppy in front of Tang Wan, always happy. All negative emotions seemed to be nothing to fear in front of Lu Ziyi. The Lu family taught Lu Ziyi very well. Tang Wan stretched out his hand, imitating Lu Lin's example, and touched Lu Ziyi's head. Lu Ziyi sniffed Tang Wan's neck and smelled a cold incense, which also contained the smell of ink. He suddenly let go of Tang Wan and said to Tang Wan, "Did you go out to play with Fu Wenzi? You smell like him." Lu Ziyi and Fu Wenzi were very difficult to deal with. He felt that Fu Wenzi was very pretentious. Ming Ming stares at Tang Wan secretly every time, but also appears to be indifferent. Really pretentious. Not as straightforward as myself and Zixi. Like it is like it. Just want to post with the people you like. But Lu Ziyi was still measured. He glanced at Tang Wan aggrievedly and added in a low voice, "I don't mean to blame you, I just want to ask if you can take me with you next time you go out to play." Then he was unwilling to give in and muttered reluctantly, "Auntie." Tang Wan felt that Lu Ziyi looked like a golden retriever, soft and furry. She smiled and nodded, waved to Sci-fi behind her, and wrote on the tablet. Goodbye. Compared with bye and farewell, Tang Wan prefers goodbye. Goodbye, looking forward to seeing you again. Sci-fi didn't even think about leaving Tang Wan behind immediately. He just sat there and watched Tang Wan's retreating figure. The Lu family manor was brightly lit, and accompanied by his bodyguards, he once again returned to the darkness. Until Tang Wan completely disappeared in front of his eyes, the gentle aura on Sci-fi's body disappeared in an instant, and he turned into the cold CEO of the SI group again. He took out his mobile phone, dialed a number, and then said, "Make an appointment for me, I want to see Rose." After waiting for a definite answer, Sci-fi hung up the phone. He subconsciously wanted to take out a cigarette and light it, but the moment he took out the cigarette, he put it back. He just held the cigarette between his lips without lighting it. He now has a child and cannot smoke. The bodyguard on the side wanted to light a cigarette for Sci-fi, but Sci-fi refused. He suddenly seemed to have thought of something, and ordered the life assistant beside him, "Find me a sign language teacher tomorrow." The assistant didn't say much, just nodded, "Okay, CEO." After saying this, Sci-fi pushed the wheelchair to the car. In the dim night, his figure did not look healthy, even a little thin, and a little lonely. Soon, he returned home and went straight to the wooden box, even opening the wooden box a little hastily. The hands with clear joints picked up a letter religiously. There are many, many letters in it. He can read one every day and participate in his blank years. At this moment, Sci-fi seemed to have come to life, not so empty. Then he pushed the wheelchair to the innermost part of the room and opened the door. This is a dark room filled with gifts he has prepared for Shwemina over the past 6 years. And the gift given to him by Shwemina. Sci-fi hugged the clothes Shwemina had worn before and buried his face in them. There is no scent of Shwemina in this dress, only a trace of nostalgia. He seemed to have taken off his disguise and let the darkness swallow him up in this dark room. Sci-fi's trembling voice sounded in the dark room, filled with inescapable pain. "I will raise her. Just wait for me. When I take care of these things, I will come to accompany you." On the other hand, the Lu family also learned about Tang Wan's life experience. Lu Yao looked at the little boy in front of her and felt a rare embarrassment. She knew her brother's bad temper. If he found out that Tang Wan was Sci-fi's child, there would be a huge commotion. He likes Tang Tang so much. he really loves Tang Tang as his younger sister. And the corners of Lu Yao's mouth twitched and she could not help but raise the corners of her mouth. Sci-fi and Lu Lin are of the same generation. But Sci-fi is Tang Guang's biological father, while Lu Lin is Tang Wan's nominal brother. Lu Yao couldn't help laughing. Short by a generation for no reason. But Lu Yao soon stopped laughing. After all, my brother is one generation shorter, so shouldn't I also be one generation shorter? Tang Wan looked at Lu Yao, who suddenly laughed out loud in confusion and tilted her head like a kitten. Those beautiful eyes are full of confusion. Lu Yao thought about it for a while, but was still prepared to respect Tang Wan's wishes. She looked directly into Tang Wan's eyes and said gently, "Tang Tang, do you want to go back to Xi's house?" "Go back to Xi's house?" Tang Wande repeated Lu Yao's words in his mind, looking a little confused. Does the Lu family no longer want themselves? Lu Yao didn't know Tang Wan as well as Lu Lin, so she didn't notice Tang Wan's uneasiness and said to herself, "Because Sci is your father, if you want to go home, we can discuss it?" Before she could say the second half of the sentence, she saw Tang Wan in front of her tightening her hands, her eyes wide open, and she bit her lower lip, as if trying to restrain her desire to shed tears. It's just that she looks like this, which makes people feel even more pity for her. Lu Yao, who had always been calm and composed, was a little at a loss. She hurriedly picked up the tissue on the table and wanted to wipe Tang Wan's tears. However, Tang Wan's tears did not fall at all. She just looked at Lu Yao with a pair of aggrieved eyes, as if asking, "Sister doesn't want me anymore." At this moment, Lu Yao's conscience that didn't exist before grew. Then he severely condemned himself. "Look at what you said. How can you say that? You should keep Tang Wan." So she waved her hand, hugged Tang Wan tightly, her face flushed with embarrassment, and said in a positive tone, "Tang Tang will always be a part of our family. No one can take away Tang Tang. Not even Sci can do it." Lu Zi on the side also eagerly came forward and hugged Tang Wan together with Lu Yao. He heard from his uncle that Tang Tang was an insecure child. Be sure about Tang Tang. Tang Wan likes to hug people. This will give you a feeling of being needed. She gently put her head on Lu Yao's shoulder, feeling extra dependent. Lu Yao hugged the soft Tang Wan and felt that her younger brother was also very discerning. Such a cute little kid should belong to their Lu family. The cold Si family cannot take care of Tang Wan. The Lu family is the most suitable. Do you like the thank you candy? Bea's reward, I love you. Thanks to Lazy Lin Lang, Book Friends 20230111163575. Do you like candy? Yi Sun Twilight E. Damn it, I can't type the two symbols here, just save me. Book Friends 2023071164. 5 Treasures monthly ticket, I love you so much. Then, I will make up for the reward updates tomorrow. It's too late today and I can't make up for it. QWQ. Good night, I love you, go to bed early. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 152. Chapter 152 is the resurgent spring and the blooming begonia flowers. Tang Wan quickly returned to the bedroom, washed up and got ready to sleep. At this moment, Lu Lin's message suddenly came over. She sat up from the bed with a snap, then turned on her mobile phone and looked at the photo Lu Lin sent her. A smile appeared on the corner of her mouth that she was not even aware of. The last is a voice bar. Tang Wan clicked to open. Tang Tang, good night. Tang Wan sent Lu Lin a good night message, and then opened his mouth to try to speak. Opening his mouth, he only said one sentence from his dry throat. Hold head high. Ang ang. The voice was so hoarse that she shut her mouth in embarrassment. Then he covered his head with the quilt and fell into a drowsy sleep. The next day, Tang Wan woke up and saw Si sitting in the Lu family's living room. He was holding the steaming breakfast in his hand. When he saw Tang Wan walking down, his eyes suddenly lit up. Lu Ziyi on the side rolled his eyes, and then was hit on the back of the head by Lu Yao. Lu Yao whispered, "Don't be rude. But I was a little unhappy with Si in my heart. You came here early in the morning to keep watch, for fear that we might kidnap Tang Tang, right? Although they did kidnap Tang Tang, they brought Tang Tang home based on their ability. How could they just hand Tang Tang over so easily?" Thinking of this, Lu Yao and Lu Ziyi both raised their chins in sync, looking a little proud. The two people's movements are like copying and pasting, which is particularly gratifying. Tang Wan didn't know what they were thinking, but looking at them so relaxed, he suddenly felt that the days of running for his life were far away from him. But Tang Wan knew that this was just her illusion. About the hatred between the Shui family for more than 20 years, and the erased past between herself and her mother, she was all talking about it, and people in the dark were still watching her. Even, they knew about their existence earlier than the Si family and the Lu family. Tang Wan thought to himself as he reached out and took the breakfast from Si hand. She subconsciously wanted to pick up the tablet and write the word thank you on it, but when she raised her eyes, she saw Si typing it in sign language using unfamiliar movements. "You're welcome." Tang Wan blinked his eyes, and there seemed to be a gap in his heart. The gentleness of spring blew into her heart, making her feel more real. The people I meet are all very nice. They did not laugh at themselves for not being able to speak, but instead learned unfamiliar sign language for their own sake. Tang Wan also knew why Lu Lin didn't let himself read the written words with an AI voice. Lu Lin wanted to speak for himself. "I want her to find her voice." But he never said it out loud, he just accompanied himself silently. The same goes for Si now. Si looked at the quiet little kid, stretched out his hand, rubbed Tang Wan's head, and then pushed the wheelchair to send Tang Wan to school. However, Tang Wan walked behind Si and helped Si push the wheelchair. The bodyguards standing aside all wanted to stop Tang Wan. This is a dangerous move. Tang Wan doesn't know why he can't push Si's wheelchair. Don't they know? Si just wants to be strong. Even if he is disabled, he still has to do these things by himself. He doesn't want others to look at him differently. However, when Tang Wan pushed Si's wheelchair, Si was just stunned for a moment, and then followed Tang Wan. Even said, "Thank you, Tang Tang." Tang Wan shook his head, pursed his lips and walked out with Si. Lu Ziyi ate the buns on the table in 3 gulps, then took a few wet wipes from the nanny's hand, and followed Tang Wan in a hurry, not forgetting what he said. "Mom, I'm going to school in Uncle C's car." Lu Yao looked at his lack of reserve and shook her head helplessly. "I don't know who I followed in such an inconspicuous manner, which is really embarrassing." The car was quiet all the way. Si was not a talkative person to begin with. He had hidden his embarrassed look yesterday, and he looked no different from usual. Tang Wan cannot speak, so the whole atmosphere is a bit weird. But Lu Ziyi has a restless character, how could he stand such an atmosphere? He twisted his uncomfortably, came to Tang Wan's side with what he thought was a small movement, and asked in a low voice. "Tang Tang, is Uncle Si really your father?" Tang Wan raised his eyes and looked at the rear-view mirror ahead. Si's eyes also fell on the mirror, and then quickly looked away. It seemed that he didn't care about Tang Wan's answer, but his eyes couldn't stop glancing in the direction of the rear-view mirror, looking a little expectant. Tang Wan didn't miss Si's little move. She thought that she was not the only one who was anxious in this world. Even a powerful adult like Si would panic about things he was unsure about. She raised the tablet in her hand and showed her answer to Lu Ziyi. "Yes. He is my father." Lu Ziyi nodded and said nothing more after that. Perhaps it's because the SI family gives people the impression that they don't even bother to maintain superficial acquaintance, and go around the world with a cold face. So most people have misunderstandings about them, feeling that they are difficult to get along with. Actually, Tangwan feels that they cannot express themselves. If you can express yourself, there probably won't be so many misunderstandings. After all, how can someone who protects the vulnerable be indifferent? Sci-fi didn't say a word until Tangwan and Lu Ziyi got out of the car. Until Tangwan was about to turn around and enter the school, Sci-fi suddenly took Tangwan's hand. He looked a little uncomfortable and said, "Are you eating at school at noon?" Tangwan nodded. "Can I pick you up after school?" Tangwan nodded again. Sci took the initiative to find a topic for the first time and tried to hide his true thoughts. This was also a rare poor acting performance. Just when he was about to leave Tangwan alone, he saw Tangwan lift the tablet. There were only 2 words on it, but it made Sci let go. Tangwan's figure disappeared into the sea of people, and Sci didn't even look back. Finally he closed the door, his face a little rosy and excited. "Ha!" The driver's hand paused slightly, and he turned his head strangely, seeing the happy expression on his employer's face. "She admits that I am her father." The shrewd expression on his face disappeared, leaving only a silly father happy in the car. No one can empathize with it. No one who has not experienced it personally cannot understand Sci's feeling of finding the motivation to live again. That is the result of him and his lover. It is a unique treasure in the world. It is a gift given to him by God, and it is the only color in his world of stagnant water. It is the resurgent spring and the blooming begonia flowers. An endless hope. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 153. Chapter 153. Bystanders are also instigators. Before Tang Wanren reached the classroom, he heard the noise in the corridor. Tang Wan is a bit short for her peers, so the crowd surrounding her blocked her sight. Lu Ziyi's campus was in the completely opposite direction to Tangwan, so as soon as he got off the bus, he took the campus sightseeing bus. Tangwan's curiosity is not serious. Because many times, people die from curiosity. However, Tangwan wanted to avoid the crowd, but some people were unwilling to let Tangwan avoid right and wrong. That casual voice sounded, and Tangwan immediately recognized that this was her desk mate. Ji Helen blocked Tangwan's way, and behind him was the classroom. He raised his chin slightly, but his friendly face had a look of arrogance. He spoke slowly, with Jing Jiao's unique accent, which sounded a little lingering. "My desk mate, don't worry, the classroom door is not open. Why are you going to the classroom?" Tangwan stopped and looked at Gong Xiao, who was surrounded by classmates. He noticed that there was an ugly look on her face, and he immediately understood what was going on. The keys to the class have always been kept by the class monitor and head teacher. Obviously, Gong Xiao did not bring the keys today, leaving everyone standing outside in the wind. Of course these pampered young masters and ladies were unhappy, so they stood at the door, surrounded Gong Xiao, and judged her. This is a collective bullying of individuals, an action in which everyone judges others. Tangwan could see Gong Xiao clenching her hands tightly and her body trembling, looking very stunned. But this is obviously a small matter. They seemed to have forgotten how much the monitor took care of them, and how busy Gong Xiao was and how much she had to do. Only Gong Xiao's deskmate still stubbornly stood beside Gong Xiao, holding Gong Xiao's hand and defending in a low voice, "Xiao Xiao, no, I didn't mean it." She is scared too. Ji Helen, on the other hand, just pretended that he couldn't see her and ignored her. He saw that Tang Wan was only looking at Gong Xiao and Fu Reihan, refusing to give him any of her eyes, so he stretched out his hand to grab Tang Wan's shoulders and bring her to his side. However, the crisp sound of pop made all the children present look surprised. They saw Tang Wan throw away Ji Helen's hand, walk to Gong Xiao and Fu Reihan, then hold their hands and walk toward the classroom door. Ji Helen was a little stunned when he saw Tang Wan walking towards him. I forgot the pain in my hands for a moment. He wanted to shout to Tang Wan, and wanted Tang Wan to stop. However, Tang Wan just walked past him without looking away and came to the classroom door behind him. She pulled out the hairpin on her head, pried open the iron piece inside, then pointed it at the keyhole, and then looked for the switch inside. Ji Helen thought Tang Wan had some good ideas to be so arrogant. When he saw Tang Wan using such an old-fashioned way, he angrily said sarcastic remarks to the side. Do you think this is some crappy project? This is not the kind of old-fashioned thing on the market. I think you have such ridiculous ideas after watching too many messy movies and TV shows. The parents of his children repeatedly warned them at home that they must agree with Ji Helen and follow his instructions. After all, compared to the hard-to-please Si family, the defensive Lu family, and the smiling Tiger Pei family, only the Ji family is easier to get along with. Of course, this one is easy to get along with, which is also different from other families. But their parents never said that when the adopted daughter of the Lu family faced off against the crown prince of the Ji family, who should they help? In the end, it was Ji Helen's friend, Xiao Minghao, who gave Ji Helen a hand and said soothingly, okay, let Tang Wan try it. Anyway, it's a waste of time. As he spoke, he glared at Fu Reihan who was being protected by Tang Wan. Fu Reihan was so frightened that he shrank behind Tang Wan. Tang Wan, however, pulled Fu Reihan and Gong Xiao to his side, helping them to shield them from these malicious sights. Ji Helen felt very unhappy when he saw Tang Wan's appearance. His eyes were a little red. In all his life, he has never been treated like this. So much so that a trace of manic depression arose in his heart. Tang Wan has a very keen sense of people, and at this moment, there was a chill on her back. But now, her attention is still on her hands. Because he had been locked up in the equipment room before, Tang Wan specially checked the keyholes in these classrooms to ensure that he could save himself the next time he encountered such an emergency. She never places her hopes on others. Only by mastering knowledge and skills can she be truly safe. She naturally did not let go of the classroom door. 3 minutes passed quickly. Some students couldn't wait any longer and subconsciously said, "Is it okay? If not, don't do it. Just go to the security guard and break down the door." However, as soon as she finished speaking, Ji Helen's gloomy gaze fell on her. Suddenly, this classmate no longer dared to speak. Her best friend held her arm and whispered, "Don't talk too much at this time. Master Ji is worried." With a click sound, Tang Wan twisted the hairpin. The door is open. Tang Wan took Gong Xiao and Fu Reihan and walked in. As for the people behind her, Tang Wan didn't have too many emotions towards them. People have a herd mentality. Perhaps not everyone among the classmates who just gathered around Gong Xiao and Fu Reihan wanted to watch the show and blame them. But their cold watching is also a way of helping others. Tang Wan doesn't like it. Gong Xiao's hand was pulled tightly by Tang Wan. She looked at the slender figure in front of her and bit her lower lip, stubbornly not letting her tears fall. This is the first time. For the first time, someone stood up to help me. No, this is not the first time. It's the second time. The first time, it was Tang Wan who gave himself a candy. It's a pity that even now, Gong Xiao doesn't know the taste of that candy. When they returned to their seats and sat down, the classmates at the door walked in. They deliberately avoided Tang Wan's position, looking very guilty. Only Ji Helen returned to his seat with a strange expression on his face. He looked straight at Tang Wan, as if looking at something interesting. Tang Wan, however, still regarded him as heir. Suddenly Ji Helen stretched out his hand and pressed the back of Tang Wan's hand. Tang Wan did not shake off Ji Helen's hand this time, but slowly raised his eyelids and looked at him expressionlessly. Ji Helen licked his dry lips and said, "Can you teach me? Teach me how to pick a lock." Tang Wan was slightly stunned and surprised. At this moment, a familiar voice came from the door, but it was cold. "Tang Tang. What are you doing?" Thanks to book friends 202402074611765 and Zixia for their generous rewards. Thanks to book friends 20190627143352019, Barry Moriyuki, and the Three Treasures of Meow Looking at the Moon for their monthly votes. I love you. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 154. Chapter 154. It can't be that he likes to give cold faces, right? Fu Wenzi stood at the door at some point, with a smile as usual on his face, but there was not much warmth in his eyes. Even Tang Wan felt a strange feeling of anger. She blinked her eyes subconsciously, wondering what Fu Wenzi was angry about. Chen Shuo followed Fu Wenzi, with a rare look of helplessness on his expressionless face. When he saw Tang Wan, he just nodded slightly as a greeting. Fu Wenzi walked up to Tang Wan. He was obviously talking to Tang Wan, but his eyes were on the hands of Tang Wan and Ji Helen. "Tang Tang, you haven't answered me yet." His final voice rises, which makes it sound a little airy. Ji Helen didn't know Fu Wenzi, but he was deeply impressed by Chen Shuo. He remembered Chen Shuo, the senior who helped Tang Wan stand out and protected Tang Wan. Ji Helen immediately took his hand back, his face flushed, and he looked very embarrassed. From Ji Helen's perspective, these two seniors are probably Tang Wan's brothers. So he took the initiative to explain. Tang Wan just opened the classroom door with a hairpin. "I want to learn this from her." The students around him were a little surprised. They had never seen Ji Helen with such a good attitude and were a little surprised. Even somewhat exaggeratedly, "I have looked out the window to see if the sun is coming out of the west today." Fu Wenzi heard Ji Helen speak, and then he turned his attention to Ji Helen. Ji Helen looked at Fu Wenzi's eyes and trembled unconsciously. For some reason, he felt that the senior's expression was a little scary. He suddenly broke out in a cold sweat. He opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but he heard Tang Wan next to him sigh and pull the senior in front of him. The feeling of danger disappeared instantly, as if the danger just now was just his own illusion. Fu Wenzi looked at Tang Wan and rolled his eyes. "What's wrong?" Although Tang Wan didn't understand why Fu Wenzi suddenly lost his temper, he still didn't forget their most important identity. That is students. Tang Wan pointed to the clock on the wall, and the meaning was self-evident. "It's time to go to class." She made a sign. Those beautiful eyes were always looking at Fu Wenzi. She knew that Fu Wenzi could understand. Chen Shuo on the side also said at this time, "I'm going back, it's time to go to class." After saying that, he turned around and left regardless of whether Fu Wenzi would follow. It seems that they came to this classroom just to take a look at Tang Wan. Just before leaving, Fu Wenzi said to Tang Wan, "I will come find you at noon." After the two of them left, whispers began to ring in the classroom. Did those two seniors just come to Tang Wan specifically? They look so handsome. I know the senior at the back, he's the senior who often appears in the commendation column. It seems to be called Chen Shuo. Yes, I also have an impression of him, but this senior seems to have never paid much attention to others. Indeed, he looked very cold just now, and no one dared to talk to him. Then what's the relationship between Tang Wan and them? I heard that we are related to them by recording a program together. It seems that we got to know each other after recording a variety show together. The classmate who said this glanced at Tang Wan out of the corner of his eye and made sure that Tang Wan did not turn around to look at him before continuing. They are all very nice to Tang Wan. Tang Wan did not expect that there were fans of that show here. He looked at the female classmate who had just spoken with a strange look and found that she turned her head with a guilty conscience. Tang Wan doesn't know why. Could it be that this classmate thought that she would be angry if she talked about him behind his back? Ji Helen also learned about the origins of the two seniors from his classmates. But I was unhappy in my heart. What the hell? Ji Helen pursed his lips. I thought unconvinced, why would he look at me like that if he wasn't Tang Wan's brother? Is it possible that a brother whom I met on a show has to control who Tang Wan makes friends with? Ji Helen felt that Lu Ziyi, who was in the same family as Tang Wan, would not care who Tang Wan was friends with. Tang Wan didn't notice the little thoughts of her desk mate, and was still concentrating on preparing for class. Only Gong Xiao and Fu Reihan, who were sitting in front of Tang Wan, looked at each other with some worry. Ji Helen was rare and sat beside Tang Wan honestly without causing any trouble. Just stared at Tang Wan without saying a word, as if thinking about something. Of course, Tang Wan ignored him. Soon it was noon. Tang Wan stood up and was about to walk outside. At this moment, Ji Helen suddenly stretched out his leg and blocked Tang Wan's path. He said in a strange tone, "You really listen to him? If he tells you to go, just go." Sounds a little sour. Tang Wan didn't like Ji Helen. Compared to Sujiajia, who is stupid and bad, Ji Helen is even more dangerous in terms of IQ than her. In short, he is not as easy to fool as Sujiajia. But fortunately, everyone knew that they didn't like him, so Tang Wan just nodded perfunctorily and walked out. She did not ask Ji Helen to get out of the way, but slowly climbed onto the table and prepared to leave from the front. When Ji Helen saw this, he was so angry that his teeth itched and he said, "You don't want to see me so much." Fortunately, there were not many classmates still in the classroom at this time, otherwise, we might have seen Ji Helen's eyes red with anger. Tang Wan turned a deaf ear and left without looking back. After Tang Wan's figure disappeared from the classroom, Ming Hao walked to Ji Helen's side. He touched the tip of his nose nonchalantly, and he knew without even thinking that his good brother was about to explode with anger. But Ming Hao can't leave the young master of the Ji family alone in the classroom. No one is watching him, and he may explode at any time. Ming Hao thought of this and said, "Would you like to go out for dinner? I heard that a private kitchen has opened outside. Let's go and have a look." However, Ji Helen stood up suddenly and rushed outside without looking back. Ming Hao saw him so angry and had no choice but to run after him. Others didn't dare to stop me. Ming Hao finally caught up with Ji Helen and asked, "Why are you walking so fast? Aren't you hungry?" Ji Helen shouted angrily, "I'm hungry. Go to the cafeteria to eat." Ming Hao's heart skipped a beat. Looking at Ji Helen starting to rush forward again, he called out in his heart, "What a good guy. What is the charm of that little mute that makes Master Ji miss him so much? Even if you are angry, go to her." Not to mention that Ji Helen was hungry and wanted to eat. After attending the school for several years, Ji Helen had never eaten in the cafeteria. Ming Hao shook his head, his voice filled with surprise. "Amazing, really amazing. It can't be because Ji Helen likes others to give him cold looks, right? That's not a joke. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him." Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 155. Chapter 155. I already have the best friend in the world. Tang Wan didn't know that after he left, there were still people whispering to him behind him. But even if she knew, she wouldn't feel anything. Tang Wan doesn't care about people she doesn't know, as long as she doesn't force herself to accept them or face those negative emotions like before. People's energy is limited and cannot be wasted. It should be focused on the people who are important to you. This is Tangwan's first time visiting the school cafeteria. Tangwan usually brings his own lunch box. Today, because Sci-fi sent himself to school, he didn't take a lunch box. However, when Tangwan walked into the cafeteria, he felt something was different. At least it's different from what Tangwan understands as a canteen. The canteen is a building with 7 floors in total. The bottom floor sells snacks and teppanyaki. The higher you go up, the higher the consumption. The more delicious it is. In addition to these, there is also a special floor dedicated to banquets. Tangwan didn't feel awkward at all, and he didn't have any uneasiness at all when he came into contact with these things for the first time. She walked in gracefully and saw Lu Ziyi, who was surrounded by many people, as well as Chen Chuo and Fu Wenzi in the vacuum next to him. On Lu Ziyi's side, Go 11 is mainly popular. She was surrounded by many female classmates, including Chen Chuo and Lu Ziyi, who had never appeared in the cafeteria unexpectedly. At first Go 11 thought they were here to find him, but after all, they turned out to be inquiring about information. Go 11 was a little unhappy. She thought these classmates were really coming to see her, but it turned out they were here to ask them questions. As a result, she also became a little aloof and unwilling to talk to them. As soon as Tangwan walked in, Go 11 pushed away these classmates and ran towards Tangwan. Then he hugged Tangwan suddenly, rubbed Tangwan's face with his own, and started acting coquettishly. "Tang Tang, why did you come here? I've been waiting for you for a long time." Lu Ziyi frowned slightly when he heard Go 11's voice, his eyes a little disgusted. "Damn it, it's so pinched." Others also stood up, making the surrounding students embarrassed to stand around anymore. The cafeteria staff also came out to guide them. "Master Fu, Master Chen, Master Lu, Miss Tang, Miss Go, please go this way." When Go 11 heard the staff calling her name, she frowned unhappily and said, "You can call me Miss 11, but don't call me by my last name." Then he muttered softly, "It feels like you are scolding me." Tangwan felt that Go 11 was not in high spirits, so he squeezed her hand and comforted her silently. But Go 11's emotions came and went quickly. She jumped behind Tangwan, squeezing out of Lu Ziyi's happy puppy position and taking the position herself. It wasn't until they were about to enter the elevator leading to the top floor that Tangwan vaguely heard a malicious word. "What are you dragging? She is just the daughter of a tigress. She has no brain at all and is so stupid." The classmate who said this suddenly turned his head, looked into Tangwan's eyes, and suddenly lost his voice. Those black eyes were like a deep pool that was about to hem in. The female classmate looked pale and closed her mouth. The friend next to her was still nudging her with his elbow, and then joked, "Why don't you talk anymore? Keep going." To be honest, I have been unhappy with Go 11 for a long time. If her family were not one of the directors, don't you think anyone in this school would pay attention to her? The female classmate on the side kept stretching out her hand to pull her clothes, saying, "Stop talking, stop talking. Go 11's friends are coming over." She did not say this last sentence. Probably I haven't had time to say it yet. Because Tangwan had already arrived in front of them. The female classmate who spoke grabbed her friend, took a step back, and asked in a loud voice, "What do you want to do?" Tangwan couldn't speak, so she took out her tablet and wrote on it. "Zixi Sanda scores are among the best in the youth group. It's not that she needs to go to school here, but that this school needs her. Her mother is an armed police officer, a very beautiful and responsible adult. Zixi is also very cute and has never used violence against her classmates. Of course, the most important point." Tangwan reached out his hand, took the somewhat uncomfortable Go 11, brought her in front of the two female classmates, and wrote expressionlessly, "She is a very good person, I like her very much. I want to be friends with her. It's embarrassing enough to be caught saying bad things about someone behind their back." Now I'm being shown off my friendship to someone in person, it's really sociable. Go 11's eyes turned red all of a sudden. Her hands twisted the hem of her skirt subconsciously, feeling a little embarrassed. Outside, people may still be envious because of her good family conditions, but this is Lingyun College, and few who go to school here are poor. Let alone being poor, there are very few people who don't even have a manor at home. Of course, her family is one of them. But Go 11 often plays games and is often away from school, so she doesn't actually take their ill intentions to heart. It can't hurt her at all. But now Go 11 realized that maybe it wasn't because she didn't care, but because no one was standing by her side. She was not as brave as Tang Tang, and she did not refute them immediately like Tang Tang. Go 11 looked at Tang Wan standing next to her. She was obviously petite, only a little bit bigger, but she could still fight for herself. She is really my best friend. Fu Wenzi saw that they had not followed him, so he stepped back. Lu Ziyi moved faster than him and came directly to Tang Wan, as if to support the two girls, and asked, "What happened?" The two female classmates were obviously a little nervous. They can speak ill of Go 11 behind her back because her family is not powerful. But Lu Ziyi is different, that is the Lu family. So the two of them looked at Tang Wan with pleading eyes, hoping that she would not write it out. However, Tang Wan shook his head. Hand raised his hand and wrote. "You have found the wrong person." The two female classmates understood Tang Wan's meaning at once. They gritted their teeth and apologized to Go 11 reluctantly. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't say bad things about you behind your back. Please forgive us." Go 11 knew that they didn't really want to apologize. But what does that matter? She already has the best friend in the world. So Go 11 shook her head and forgave them. It doesn't matter. Then he took Tang Wan's hand and walked toward the elevator. Only Lu Ziyi, who stayed where he was, stared at the classmates in front of him and snorted coldly before leaving. Forget it, Tang Tang isn't even angry anymore, so don't make any more trouble. Go 11 is even more clingy to Tang Wan. Even while eating, he held Tang Wan's arm and didn't let go. Tang Wan was also used to Go 11, but he didn't pull his arm back. This weird way of eating made Lu Ziyi, who came in last, twitch at the corner of his mouth. He said angrily, "You just can't let go of our Tang Tang." Thanks to Qi Linjian, Jinzi Wan Zizi, Suyan Chaotian, I am also wonderful. Book friend 201809132035249446, 4 treasures for their rewards, I love you, Thanks to the monthly tickets of Qi Linjian, Jinzi late branches. 8/2, Janie's 4 treasures. It's too late, good night. Damn it, it's been half a month since I had someone draw that character. It's not all good. I'm going to be broken, I'm really going to be broken. My heart is broken. That painter is better than me. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 156. Chapter 156. Opportunities are reserved for those who are prepared. Go 11 rolled her eyes and said angrily, "You boys, stay out of the business of girls." As soon as these words came out, even Fu Wenzi and Chen Chuo, who were eating silently on the side, were shot innocently. However, Chen Chuo never paid attention to these things. He didn't even raise his eyelids and pretended that he didn't hear anything. Fu Wenzi is not like this. He came just for Tang Wan, so naturally he couldn't listen to such words that separated himself from Tang Wan. But Fu Wenzi was not an irrational person, so he just listened to Go 11's words and didn't take them to heart. Lu Ziyi listened to Go 11's words and said, "Hey, walk to Tang Wan, then sat down next to Tang Wan, and said to Go 11, "You are really too much." As he spoke, he followed the example of his elders in the family and gave Tang Wan something to eat with his chopsticks. Then he took care of himself and started eating. Tang Wan also returned the courtesy, picked up the serving chopsticks, and gave Lu Ziyi a piece. At this time, Go 11 was unhappy. She pushed her bowl in front of Tang Wan and whispered, "I want it too." Tang Wan also gave her a pair of chopsticks. Mainly focus on a balance. Chen Shuo and Fu Wenzi were not as naive as the two of them. They just glanced at each other and then looked away, looking uninterested. Just when Tang Wan was about to take the first bite, Fu Wenzi suddenly spoke, "Tang Tang, have you thought about the tent partner?" Tang Wan put the crispy duck in his hand into his mouth, chewed it slowly, made sure it was eaten clean, and then raised his hand to sign. "Not yet, but I have already thought of someone with national characteristics. There is no rule in Tangguan that she should not speak during meals or sleep." When Fu Wenzi asked, she answered directly. Upon seeing this, Fu Wenzi had an idea in his mind, and then said, "Why don't you cooperate with me?" Tang Wan raised his head in confusion and looked at Fu Wenzi with some confusion. "If I remember correctly, the Fu family doesn't seem to have any tent business, right? The Fu family in Xiangjiang seems to be engaged in the business of machinery and information systems." Fu Wenzi instantly understood Tang Wan's expression. Just when he was about to speak, Lu Ziyi spoke up first. He swallowed the yam in his mouth and asked curiously, "What kind of cooperation?" As he spoke, he looked at Tang Wan, pursed his lips, and said in a somewhat aggrieved tone, "Why didn't Tang Tang come to me? We are still a family." That little resentful expression is as fun as it gets. And this is not the end yet. Go 11 on the side also stretched out her hand to hold Tang Wan's wrist, competing with Lu Ziyi for Tang Wan's attention, saying, there's me, I can help too." They were scrambling, fearing that Tang Wan would get closer to others. Chen Shuo took a sip of the soup, lowered his eyelids slightly, but still said nothing. "It's like an invisible person." Tang Wan had a rare headache. For the first time, she felt a little melancholy. He raised his eyes and glanced at Fu Wenzi, as if blaming him for mentioning this matter at this time. Fu Wenzi, on the other hand, just smiled, looking at the farce in front of him and feeling pretty good. Tang Wan just held them down, took out the tablet, and wrote on it. "It's about the arrangements for the spring flower party. You are from the West Campus and it is inconvenient to come here. So I didn't look for you." Of course, the most important reason was definitely not this, but Tang Wan felt that if he called Lu Ziyi and Go 11, they might quarrel with Ji Helen. She doesn't want her family and friends to be shunned by the unpredictable Ji Helen. Lu Ziyi and Go 11 seemed to be careless here in Tangguan. The two of them believed whatever Tang Wan said. It was extremely simple. They just didn't want to think about it. Chen Shuo was also from the East Campus. Why didn't Tang Wan find Chen Shuo? It was clear that Tang Wan did not want them to help at all. Seeing that they didn't ask any more questions, Tang Wan breathed a sigh of relief quietly. Then he looked at Fu Wenzi, who was watching the excitement, and made a sign. "Isn't this the Fu family's property? It's useless for you to ask for this publicity opportunity." Tang Wan wanted to refuse, but what Fu Wenzi said next stunned her. "The Fu family does not do these things, but the Pei family has a branch industry that does these things. The Pei family's branch industry has been doing fabric-related projects and promoting national culture. It is the most suitable partner. Tang Tang, think about it." Tang Wan is indeed a little moved, but is the relationship between the Pei family and the Fu family good enough for Fu Wenzi to decide to cooperate? Lu Ziyi, who was beside Tang Wan, took a bite of the chicken wing and then said, "Don't worry, Tang Tang, he can take care of the Pei family's affairs." Although Fu Wenzi is the young master of the Fu family, his mother is from the Pei family. Do you still remember the Pei Yunzhou from last time? Tang Wan nodded following Lu Ziyi's words. She still has an impression of Pei Yunzhou. Speaking of which, Pei Yunzhou's temperament is indeed somewhat similar to that of Fu Wenzi. They are both the kind of people with a big smile but cold eyes. Tang Wan was silent for a moment after listening to what they said. If it is true as Lu Ziyi said, then Fu Wenzi is indeed a very suitable partner. Just Tang Wan felt a strange emotion. She always felt that Fu Wenzi had reached this point long ago. I figured out that I wanted to find a tent partner, and I figured out that I didn't have time to do these things during this period, so as soon as he brought it up, I would agree. Tang Wan felt that such a thing was something Fu Wenzi could do. But she couldn't figure out why Fu Wenzi did this. Would this do him any good? Tang Wan doesn't know, but it seems that Fu Wenzi can be considered a friendly friend to her, so it should be a matter of course for her to cooperate with him. So Tang Wan made a gesture. That gesture means good. Fu Wenzi had long expected that Tang Wan would agree to him, but he just raised his eyebrows and looked really happy. Just where no one noticed, Chen Shuo curled his fingers slightly. Looking at Tang Wan and Fu Wenzi, their eyes were a little complicated. They have a good understanding. Many people have already learned sign language for Tang Wan. Chen Shuo pursed his lips silently and concentrated on eating, but his mind had already drifted away. He has also learned sign language for a few days, and he can probably understand a bit of what Tang Wan just meant. They reached cooperation. The reason why I don't cooperate with the two people around me is because they are from the West Campus. But as a person from the East Campus, I didn't see Tang Wan coming to see me. Chen Shuo put the glutinous rice lotus root on the chopsticks into his mouth and frowned slightly. The glutinous rice and lotus root this time was not delicious. Why is it so astringent? Made him very unhappy. Fu Wenzi looked at Chen Shuo out of the corner of his eye, and then looked away without leaving a trace. Opportunities are reserved for those who are prepared. Ah! Where have my babies gone? Why is no one talking to me? Woo woo. Kick heartbreak, pick it up from the ground and glue it with 502. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 157. Chapter 157. A Mechanical Bird. After the group finished eating, they were ready to return to the lounge to rest. At Lingyuan College, every student has a lounge. These lounges are also arranged according to the friendly relationships between these students, and are not arranged randomly. Several children who have a good relationship will live in a villa. They each have a small room and do not disturb each other. In the past, Go 11 had no friends who lived with her in a small villa. She lived on a flat floor by herself. Now that Tang Wan came, she naturally went to Tang Wan and lived with Tang Wan. Lu Ziyi and Tang Wan are relatives, so naturally they live in the same villa. Chen Shuo and Fu Wenzi were also arranged by their family elders to live in a small villa in Tangguan. Their relationship has also become closer invisibly. Each student's lounge is independent, and there is no need to worry about affecting anyone, and the privacy is very good. This kind of lounge villa is actually very small, and each room only has basic equipment. But the comfort of use is highly mentioned. Compared with a dormitory, such a lounge makes people feel more at home. When Tang Wan came here for the first time, it was a bit unbelievable. It turns out that there are schools that will carve the words "I am very rich" on their foreheads. But the entire Lingyuan Academy does not look like the nouveau riche style, but the kind of luxury that is not low-key. Most of the students' small villas are brought by their own classmates. The small villa in Tangguan was designed by Lu Lin himself. Everything in her lounge was decorated by Lu Lin, and there was even a bear that Tangguan liked. The whole layout is like a tree nest, with only one large, soft bed. People can just lie down in it, it is very comfortable. As for the other children, Except for Lu Ziyi's room, which Lu Lin helped decorate, he had no time to take care of the others. So I let them choose the room they want to live in, and they can live in it anyway. The other side. Sci-fi and Pei Yunzhou met. When Pei Yunzhou heard Sci-fi's speculations, he leaned back exaggeratedly. He was holding a glass of red wine in his hand. His eyes were looking at the red wine inside, but his eyes were always distracted. He did not focus on it at first sight. "Set it here," he said casually. "You are wrong. Fu Wenzi is only 8 years old. He doesn't know what it means to like him." Sci actually agreed with Pei Yunzhou's words. After all, they are too young and too rational to distinguish what is love and what is friendship. Is there no possessiveness in friendship? That's impossible. Everyone will be possessive. Haven't you seen that Go 11 also dislikes Lu Ziyi all day long? It was because she felt that Lu Ziyi was competing for Tang Tang with her. Sci was a little unsure when he thought about this. But Tang Tang is the daughter he finally found, so how could he not be wary of these little brats? What if they kidnapped their daughter? Sci could not withstand such a blow. The reason why I didn't go to the Lu family to ask for someone was because I didn't want Tang Tang to be embarrassed, but couldn't the Fu family and the Pei family make the decision themselves? Pei Yunzhou looked at Sci, who had a dark face, and drank the red wine in his hand. He even looked like a thug. The gentleness in his body had completely disappeared when he drank the wine. Pei Yunzhou wiped the corner of his mouth and said something slowly. "Tang Tang doesn't look like a child who will wake up early." These words awakened Sci. Yes. Tang Tang is a child who doesn't care much about love. Like this kind of emotion, in her opinion, it is family affection and friendship. She has never thought about love. As long as no one deliberately points it out in front of her eyes, she probably won't react until she is 20 years old. She has too many things on her mind. She has a family, goals, studies, and many people she cares about, so much so that she would subconsciously ignore some things. Sci breathed a sigh of relief and drank the wine in front of him. After Sci left, Pei Yunzhou took out his mobile phone and called one of the phone numbers. The call was quickly connected. Pei Yunzhou had a gentle and scum-like smile on his lips, and his voice was a little hoarse. "My dear nephew, Sci is very dissatisfied with you." Fu Wenzi on the other end of the phone was not angry. He just snorted lightly without saying anything substantial. Pei Yunzhou just wanted to tease this proud man. After all, the chances of seeing Fu Wenzi suffer were very few. "What? If you don't believe it, people will despise you." Fu Wenzi didn't take Pei Yunzhou's words to heart. His fingers tapped the table gently, and his voice was as usual. He didn't dare to restrict Tang Tang's friends. "So I will become friends with Tang Tang." Pei Yunzhou paused slightly when he heard Fu Wenzi's words. "Friend? Just friends? Just friends and making such a big show of it?" Just one sentence burned Pei Yunzhou's CPU dry. Transferring to another school and asking your mother to solve the problem, just to make a friend? Then you are a pretty pious friend. Pei Yunzhou thought so, but didn't say it. "I even feel that my nephew, who has been unlovable since he was a child, is a little cute now." Cutely silly. Are the feelings of adolescence just child's play, just a whim? Pei Yunzhou doesn't think so. When a person realizes that he is an independent individual and can talk and communicate equally with another completely different individual, and ensure that he can live in this world, it is actually a prerequisite for establishing a relationship. But Pei Yunzhou didn't want to point it out. It feels like Fu Wenzi is not as smart as he thought, and even like Tang Wan, he is a little clumsy and slow. Fu Wenzi saw that Pei Yunzhou didn't say anything important, so he hung up the phone. His lounge is opposite Tang Wan. As long as he opens the door, he can see Tang Wan's room. But he didn't do anything, he just turned on the computer and started working. He has completed the first step. He has already arrived at Tang Wan's side. He had a long time to observe Tang Tang and clarify his thoughts. There is no need to be impatient. Soon, the lunch break ended and the door of Tang Wan's lounge opened. Others did not stay in bed and walked out directly. The first person to meet Tang Wan was Chen Chuo. He did not have the headphones he had been wearing on his head. He just looked at the ground with a bored expression, lost in thought. Tang Wan walked to his side without disturbing him. Suddenly, Tang Wan felt a cold hand hold his hand, and then stuffed something into his palm. Tang Wan subconsciously raised his hand and took a look. It's hard to take your eyes away once you see it. It is a mechanical bird. It is made up of many parts and looks lifelike. Even filled with a vitality that only living things can possess. Thanks to the 4 treasures of Lemon Bulletin Mang, Buddha Line Lan, and BB990114 for their monthly votes. I love you so much. Hold on, keep on safe, it's too late, good night, kk. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 158. Chapter 158 Reciprocity. Chen Chuo saw a look of surprise in Tang Wan's eyes, with a tenderness in his eyes that he was not even aware of. In their home, such gadgets are not considered worthy of publicity. They will not allow themselves to do it, nor will they allow themselves to do it. Chen Chuo just thought that Tang Wan was different from those people. She shouldn't laugh at herself for doing these unflattering things. As expected, Chen Chuo breathed a sigh of relief when he saw the genuine surprise in Tang Wan's eyes. The corners of his mouth were raised a little, and he seemed to be smiling. When Fu Wenzi came down, he saw this scene. But he didn't do anything more. He just walked to Tang Wan's side and followed him to class. Looking at the mechanical bird in Tang Wan's hand, he asked, "What is this?" Chen Chuo's voice replied without a trace of ripples, "It's a mechanical bird, made of copper sheets." The head of the mechanical bird is emerald green, and the overall appearance is somewhat like a kingfisher. The body parts of the mechanical bird are exposed mechanical gears, which look very delicate. It is indeed a gadget that girls like very much. But Tang Wan only glanced at it and returned the mechanical bird to Chen Chuo. Chen Chuo must have put a lot of thought and time into such a delicate thing. You can't collect it yourself. Chen Chuo saw Tang Wan handing the mechanical bird back, his expression hidden under his glasses was a bit astonished. Obviously he did not expect that Tang Wan would refuse this gift. After all, Tang Wan is the kind of person who would hardly refuse the kindness of others. But she rejected herself. Chen Chuo couldn't tell how he felt, but he was a little unhappy anyway. But Chen Chuo has always been used to not revealing himself, so he said nothing, did not take the mechanical bird from Tang Wan's hand, gathered his clothes, and walked out directly. Lu Ziyi and Go 11 didn't go with them, so they didn't go back with them. There were quite a few classmates who looked at Tang Wan and his group along the way. After all, Chen Chuo is a celebrity on the school's commendation list, and they are familiar with him. And all 3 of them are good looking. Tang Wan didn't understand why Chen Chuo suddenly became angry. She just felt that such a gift was a bit too expensive. Tang Wan subconsciously raised the mechanical bird in his hand, feeling that he had gone too far. So he quickened his pace, walked to Chen Chuo, and tugged on the hem of his clothes. Chen Chuo turned around and saw Tang Wan standing behind him. He suppressed the strange emotions in his heart and asked, "What's wrong?" Tang Wan tilted his head, like a kitten, and took out a large bag of biscuits from his pocket, and then took out a handwritten coupon. Chen Chuo picked it up and looked at it, and saw what was written on it. Snack supply coupon, 1 month. Chen Chuo has never seen a membership card since he was a child, and this is the first time he has seen such a simple supply coupon. But the corner of his mouth curled up. Although the arc was small, it was definitely there. There was some gentleness in his voice, then I will accept it. Reciprocity of courtesy. The students around him were whispering, and some didn't understand what they were doing. It can't be that you're sending a love letter, right? Whose love letter is just a blank piece of paper? Moreover, the classmate they were traveling with looked so bad. Tang Wan nodded, thinking that this is how it should be between friends. She shouldn't have refused Chen Chuo's gift just now. This is how friends should interact, little by little, and then the bond becomes deeper and deeper. You cannot always have an attitude of rejection. Tang Wan was in the lower grade and quickly reached the classroom door, while Chen Chuo and Fu Wenzi were in the upper grade and still had to walk some distance. After Tang Wan left their sight, Fu Wenzi and Chen Chuo looked away at the same time and walked back to their class. It's just that the relatively harmonious atmosphere between them suddenly disappeared like smoke, and it seemed a bit tense. When Tang Wan returned to the classroom, Ji Helen was already sitting in his seat. It's just that his face looked very ugly, as if he was angry. Tang Wan didn't say anything nonsense to him. He just supported the table with his hands, turned over and returned to his seat. The movements were so smooth that Ji Helen didn't find a chance to talk to her. Of course, I am even more angry. No one on the side dared to cause trouble, but Ji Helen wanted to provoke Tang Wan again. He poked Tang Wan's elbow and said, "Hey, what's that in your hand?" Tang Wan didn't like Ji Helen and was not willing to talk to Ji Helen. So he put the mechanical bird in his hand inside his school bag. Of course she just made an action. In fact, the mechanical bird was still on Tang Wan's body, just placed in the school uniform. Tang Wan doesn't trust Ji Helen. What if Ji Helen saw that he had placed the mechanical bird there and couldn't control his curiosity and deliberately looked at it? Tang Wan doesn't want the things given to him by his friends to break because of something that might happen. She cherishes these gifts very much. After Tang Wan put the things away in front of Ji Helen, he didn't even look away. He wanted to say something else, but the teacher had already entered the classroom, and he suddenly restrained his voice. Tang Wan doesn't like herself at all, so it's better not to disturb her when she's in class. Otherwise she will dislike herself even more. Ji Helen had never felt so wronged before, so much so that he looked at Tang Wan with some resentment in his eyes. Tang Wan, turning a blind eye. When get out of class was over, the head teacher asked Chang Tang Wan to go to the office and wanted to ask about the preparation progress of the spring flower party. Ji Helen looked at Tang Wan's leaving figure, turned to look at Tang Wan's school bag, and tried to reach out his hand. I'm so curious and want to see what it is. But when he put his hand on his school bag, Tang Wan's frowning expression appeared in front of him. Then he quickly took his hand back. Just when Ji Helen raised his head to see if anyone around him had noticed his weird movements, he saw the person at the table in front of him looking at him with a complicated expression. Ji Helen, no matter how thick-skinned he is, can't stand such scrutiny. His face turned red all of a sudden. He was still chattering, "What are you looking at?" Gong Xiao then turned his head away, but before turning his head, he said, "Don't open other people's things, respect other people's privacy." Ji Helen's face turned blue and white at times because of what she said. Just when he was about to get angry, Ming Hao grabbed him by the neck and took him away. The classroom returned to calm, and everyone left one after another, except Tang Wan who had not returned yet. Tang Wan handed his plan to the class teacher and asked him to read it over. She watched the elderly head teacher take out his glasses and put them on the bridge of his nose, and looked at them seriously. He walked to the bench beside him and sat down. The wind blew through the office window, allowing Tang Wan to smell the unique ink fragrance of the book. Tang Wan took a deep breath with some cherishment. This is the life she had dreamed of before. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, Do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 159. Chapter 159 Who will go abroad? Tang Wan did not expect that the head teacher would look at her for so long. After a long time, the head teacher took off his glasses and looked at Tang Wan with admiration in his eyes. Then he praised, "You are very powerful. It is not easy to think about these things so comprehensively." Tang Wan's face was flushed, and her 2 feet that were not touching the ground were swaying unconsciously. She looked very cute. Seeing Tang Wan's appearance, the head teacher also curled his eyes. There were a lot of wrinkles at the end of his eyes, making him look a little gentle as he aged. As thick as a mountain. Tang Wan took out a tablet and wrote on it the investors he had found. Almost everything was arranged. The head teacher nodded, perhaps because he saw that Tang Wan was so thorough in doing things at such a young age, so he became a little more interested in talents and said, "You can write a backup plan so that if something unexpected happens, you can remedy it as soon as possible." It was the first time Tang Wan heard the class teacher put forward such a suggestive opinion. On weekdays, he just casually watched everyone's actions in the classroom. This elderly head teacher is indeed serious and responsible. But he is definitely not the nosy kind. So Tang Wan was still a little surprised when he heard him say such words. The head teacher pretended not to notice Tang Wan's surprise and continued to speak. "It is best that your backup plan can be modified directly on site. Identify the suppliers you are most confident about. I think you must be in your own hands when it comes to ingredients. It's best not to leave it to anyone else. After all, what's at the entrance is the most important thing." Tang Wan nodded and accepted the class teacher's kindness. By the time Tang Wan came out of the office, the sun was almost setting. The golden afterglow was shining on the campus, and even the green plants were dyed with a warm color. It looks like a fairy tale world. Lu Ziyi has been waiting for Tang Wan at the door for a long time. He was carrying Tang Wan's school bag and looking at the children's watch in his hand, replying to someone's message, so much so that he didn't notice Tang Wan walking up to him. Tang Wan is a measured person. She did not read Lu Ziyi's chat history. Just stood up on tiptoes and patted Lu Ziyi on the shoulder. "It's time to go home." On the other side, Sicily. Chris has not been in good health since the last cruise incident. He always felt as if he had forgotten something important, but no one mentioned anything about the cruise ship in front of his eyes, which gave him an illusion. Perhaps the things he didn't remember were not particularly important, so he forgot them. And Tulu stood at the door of the room, playing with the lighter one after another, without sharing his eyes with the people around him. After an unknown amount of time, he spoke slowly, with a somewhat casual and even dangerous tone, "Do you want a route from Sicily to the east? You know, there is no way I can give you this route. It has taken our family so many years to open up the trading channels in the east. If we add you, our risk factor will be greatly increased." When Turu said this, the smile on his lips was a little cold, making his already fierce face look even more ferocious, a bit like a wild beast ready to hunt. "The price is too high. Our friendship alone cannot achieve this. I cannot give up our best interests to you first." The man standing next to Tulu's had dark skin and long sleeves that covered his wrists. However, when the wind blew, the shirt swayed slightly, revealing the faint tattoo on his wrist. The plump woman next to him lit a cigar and handed it to the man's hand. The man took a deep breath, then exhaled the smoke and said in Italian, "You cooperate with me. When did I stop you from making money? We are best friends." Toulouse had a false smile on his face. He knew that few words coming out of the man in front of him could be believed. For a person like him who deals with things that cannot be touched anytime and anywhere, it is as difficult to get some profit from him as to meat from a tiger's mouth. But there is no way, the world is so big. If you want to make money in the world and open your business abroad, then the more dangerous places are the places where you can make more money. The Brown family, where Kendwin belongs, makes money in the most dangerous place in the world. They have no bottom line, so the families in the East never like to cooperate with these people. Kendwin looked at Tullis's hesitant look, and held back his mouth with some displeasure. I think you have really been with those Eastern merchants for a long time, and you are constrained by everything. It can't be because you think the accident on the last cruise was my fault, right? Please, my dear friend, I have such a good relationship with you, how could I do such a dangerous thing on your cruise ship? Toulouse replied angrily, at least they don't have to worry about their lives when making a deal, but when making a deal with you, I have to tie my head to my belt at all times. If I accidentally it will kill you. Cand Irvin smiled casually. Even his smile had a air. He waved his hand and asked the child sitting in the corner to come out. The white-haired fur looks kind of holy and beautiful, especially when he deliberately pretends to be harmless. No one would think that he is a child who can't shake a gun. Kendwin sighed, his eyebrows looking a little melancholy. Well, it seems you don't want to cooperate with me anymore. Kendwin's voice fell, and a cruise ship drove over from the opposite side. He got off the boat with Fur, and walked over there with his bodyguard. Then he waved his hand in the direction of Toulouse. Good luck to you, my friend, and may God bless you. Then he turned his head, the smile on his face suddenly sank, and the bodyguards escorted a little girl to him. He knelt down and looked at Sujiajia, who was about to go crazy from torture. His tone was a little soft, but his Chinese was pretty standard. Poor little girl, tell me, which of those people from last time are going abroad in the near future? There is no way, that Eastern country is the only country that does not have any channels for dangerous goods to enter. A person with a sensitive identity like him cannot get in. For was young and could still make a forgery, but he couldn't do it himself. Sujiajia looked at the man in front of her, and the tears hidden in her eyes suddenly flowed out. Cand Irvin didn't have that much of a good temper. He picked up the pistol and put it against Sujiajia's temple, and said, I don't like talking nonsense. Sujiajia was almost scared out of her mind. She said without thinking, Lulin is filming during this time. He will go abroad. Woohoo, menstrual period is so uncomfortable. Good night, dear ones, I love you. End of this chapter. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 160. Chapter 160 Tang Wanshi is a madman. Kendwin grabbed Sujiajia's chin and picked her up from the ground. Her attitude seemed much kinder than before. But Sujiajia knew that all these were appearances, just pretended by Kandel. She saw Uncle Ho's body being thrown into the high seas with her own eyes. This man could really kill people. You must ensure that you are useful, otherwise you will die on the high seas. Thinking of this, Sujiajia quickly added, Go Eleven's mother, she will also go abroad during this period, and she will accompany her. Sujiajia was still afraid that the man in front of her wouldn't believe it, so she added a specific time, on the 24th of this month. Kendwin pulled Sujiajia up, threw it to Fur, lit a cigarette, looked at the Andrew family cruise ship gradually disappearing in front of his eyes, and waved his hand. With a bang, the cruise ship behind them exploded, just like the explosion in the last event. Kendwin looked at the red light that came on the deck and showed a wanton smile, showing extremely arrogant fangs. Ha 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 ha. Those around him didn't dare to speak, but they knew why he was laughing. He whistled and waved to the people on the deck, It seems that I have lost another friend. It's a pity. He said regretful words, but there was no expression of regret on his face. Sujiajia on the side looked pale at the explosion on the cruise ship. She couldn't understand why there was such a big difference between this life and the previous one. I was so smooth sailing in my last life, why do I encounter such desperados in this life? In her previous life, she took Tang Wan's opportunity to participate in a variety show and entered the entertainment industry. Although there is still a gap between him and people like Lulin, he is still living a prosperous life. When she saw Tangwan again, she saw that Tangwan had become her substitute. She has scars all over her body, and she doesn't even need makeup when her back is exposed. What the director wanted was this kind of real scar. Her face is still good looking, but she looks a little thin due to malnutrition. The whole person is like a white bone wrapped in a skin, and it looks like it will break into pieces soon. Only those eyes, with endless vitality, are like tough weeds growing out of the dirty soil. Sujiajia didn't want Tangwan to appear in front of the public. What if Lulin knew that she had changed people before and attracted his attention? She doesn't want to give anyone the chance to ruin her life. So Sujiajia deliberately deceived Tangwan into signing a yin and yang contract. She was sent to the beds of bosses with special fetishes, and became a victim to advance herself to a higher level. It's a pity that Tangwan is like a loach, too flexible to catch her. Everyone thought she was drunk, but they didn't expect her acting skills to be so good, so she ran out directly. Of course, Sujiajia couldn't let Tangwan run away. If anyone found out about this, her career would be completely ruined. So she ran out with Tangwan. That was the first time Sujiajia saw Tangwan's true face. Perhaps because she hasn't spoken for a long time, her voice has become completely hoarse, and the sound is unpleasant, like some sharp objects rubbing against each other. Harsh and scary. Even though she was in a state of embarrassment, her brilliance could not be hidden. Sujiajia heard Tangwan say, "Do you think everything you do is perfect?" Sujiajia raised her head suddenly, feeling panic in her heart. As long as a person is alive, he will leave a mark, and no one can completely erase the traces of others. Sujiajia, how many people have you and your mother killed, and how many people have you stepped on their bones to get to the top? Don't you feel guilty? In the dead of night, when you look at the darkness, don't you feel those eyes are looking at you? Sujiajia heard her own voice and was filled with gloom in the darkness. What nonsense are you talking about? My mother raised you so kindly, and this is how you slander her. Tangwan smiled softly. She looked at the tall building behind her, which showed the poster of her latest drama, and then said, "A pebble dropped into the sea cannot make a big splash." Sujiajia watched helplessly as Tangwan stood on the edge of the rooftop, the night wind blowing her long hair away, and the moon behind her like a opening his eyes and looking at the world. Under the bright moon there is filth and sin. And the only clean color will be shattered in this night. When the world is turbid, purity is the original sin. Her voice was colder than the moonlight, but calmer than ever before. But what if it's my life? You come down, we have something to talk about. Sujiajia panicked. She knew that if Tangwan committed suicide in this most lively place, it would definitely create a hot spot, and she, the last person to meet her, would definitely be interrogated. So she ran out and wanted to catch Tangwan. However, Tangwan just closed his eyes, jumped up and jumped down. This is the tallest building in Kyoto and also the most prosperous city. A woman jumped. A mandala splashed on the ground at the cost of life, staining the clean streets with blood. People were running around, and the women passing by were blinded by Tangwan's warm blood. At the same time, the recording of the conversation between Sujiajia and the rich man was also exposed. Together with Tangwan's body, she completed her final counterattack in this helpless world. The next 10 days were filled with news about child abuse at Zinxan orphanage and reports of missing children at the border. Sujiajia could not imagine how Tangwan collected so much evidence in an isolated and helpless environment. But she soon realized that all of this was Tangwan's fault. Including Tangwan reappearing in front of him, it is also a step for Tangwan to complete his counterattack. She knew that he had squeezed out her spot, so she deliberately came in front of her and aroused her alertness. All she needs is evidence from her side, and then she can die. She just needs to be the bomb that detonates and lets the evidence see the light for a moment, or a second. As long as there is enough movement, a crack will be torn out. The light will shine in. Sujiajia hid in the villa, listening to the curses outside, shivering and wrapping herself in a quilt. Madman. That lunatic in Tangwan. She is a madman. How could anyone think of death as a homecoming? How can someone not be afraid of death? Sujiajia didn't dare to die, but there were always people who didn't want her to live. Her eyes and mouth were covered and then thrown into the sea. All struggles are in vain, I can only feel the feeling of suffocation in the sea, and then drown myself. At the last moment of her life, Sujiajia realized that killing a person is so simple. Fur came to Sujiajia and patted her face with the gun in his hand, his tone a little cold. He leaned close to Sujiajia's ear and whispered something. Sujiajia's eyes slowly opened wide, and then she nodded desperately. Okay, I'll do it.